friends were having fun. What happened after is horrifying. On February 24th, 1978, 5 men were excited for their big basketball game, scheduled for the next day. They were part of a team for mentally disabled adults and were going to compete in a tournament. The event was something they'd all look forward to. For weeks the night before, they decided to drive to Chico, a nearby town, to watch a college basketball game. A fun night out before their own match. They never came home after the college game in Chico. They got into Madrigo's car, a turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego, and began the drive back to Yuba City. But instead of following the most direct route home, the car somehow ended up deep in the Plumas National Forest, about 70 miles east of Chico. Their car was discovered abandoned a few days later, on February 28th, by park rangers on a remote mountain road near Oroville, far off their intended route. The vehicle had been stopped at the snow line, its tires barely stuck in the snow, yet it appeared to have been in good working condition. The gas tank was a quarter full, and the car was unlocked with one window rolled down. Even stranger, there was no sign of struggle or foul play, and none of the men were inside. The fact that they had gone so far off course was baffling. Madriga, who was known to be protective of his car, would not have driven it into the mountains without a good reason. Moreover, the route they had taken was treacherous and entirely out of character for any of them, particularly given the late hour and their important game the next day. What was even more confounding was that none of them appear to have tried to free the car. Several of the men were in good physical condition, and it would have been relatively easy for them to push the vehicle out of the snow. Yet, the car had been left behind with no clear explanation. For months there was no sign of the men. The families were distraught, and the police were left scratching their heads. For months later, in June 1978, the snow in the Sierra Nevada has started to melt, revealing a grim discovery in a deserted Forest Service trailer, 19 miles away from the location where the car had been abandoned. The body of Ted Wire was found. He had wrapped himself in 8 layers of sheets and blankets from the trailer, yet despite this he had succumbed to hypothermia. His feet were severely frostbitten, and his body had lost nearly 100 pounds. But what was most bizarre was the fact that the trailer had enough food and propane to last all 5 men for several weeks, yet it seemed Ted had eaten very little. Cans of food had been opened, but much more remained untouched. Additionally, a propane tank that could have provided heat was never used. More disturbing still was that Vire appeared to have died a slow and agonizing death. His beard growth suggested he had survived for as long as 13 weeks after the men had gone missing. Yet despite access to supplies, he hadn't taken the necessary steps to sustain himself, leaving everyone puzzled. Not far from the trailer, the remains of Jack Mondrugo and Bill Sterling were found. They had apparently succumbed to the elements while trying to hike back down the mountain, likely in an attempt to find help. Their bodies had been partially consumed by animals and were scattered near the road. Jack Hewitt's remains were also found much farther away. His body was scattered over a small area, his bones bleached by the sun. Like the others, he had likely succumbed to hypothermia. But one man remained missing, Gary Mathias. Unlike the others, no trace of Mathias was ever found. His shoes were left in the trailer, leading to speculation that he may have ventured out into the snow in an attempt to find help. Given his history of schizophrenia, some wondered if he had a psychotic episode and wandered off into the wilderness. Others speculated he may have met foul play, but no evidence of his fate has ever surfaced. The Yuba County Five case is filled with maddening contradictions and loose ends. How did the men end up on such an isolated road, far from where they were supposed to be? Why did they abandon their car, which was in good working condition? And why didn't they take advantage of the food and warmth available in the trailer? What had happened in those final days and weeks that caused these friends to suffer such a strange and tragic fate? Several theories have been proposed over the years. One possibility is that they were forced off course by someone else, perhaps someone they met at the basketball game. Another theory suggests that the men became disoriented due to a mix of fear and confusion, possibly exacerbated by Mathias's mental health issues. Still others believe the men may have followed someone, thinking they were being led to safety, only to become hopelessly lost. There's also speculation about an encounter with an unknown figure. A witness, a man named Joseph Shones, later came forward, saying that on the night of the disappearance, he had been in the same area and had gotten his own car stuck in the snow. While trying to free his vehicle, he suffered a mild heart attack and claimed that he saw a group of people, including a woman with a baby, in the headlights of another car nearby. He called for help, but they ignored him and walked away. Some believe Jones may have seen the Yuba County Five that night, though this account only adds another layer of mystery. The story of the Yuba County Five remains one of the most perplexing, unsolved cases in American history. The tragedy devastated their families, who have never found peace or closure. The lingering question of what really happened in those snowy mountains that February night still haunts true crime enthusiasts, investigators, and anyone who stumbles upon the case. It is a story where the landscape itself seems to conspire against understanding, where the elements of isolation, fear, and human fragility collide in an eerie tale that, even decades later, feels like a riddle without an answer. She is Satan's greatest soldier, the mysterious and chilling case of Belle Gunness, one of America's most infamous female serial killers, is still baffling to this day. Born in Norway in 1859, Belle immigrated to the U.S. and eventually settled on a farm in La Porte, Indiana. What makes her story so terrifying is the sheer number of lives she may have claimed and how she almost got away with it. Belle's life was riddled with suspicious deaths, starting with her first husband, Mads Sorensen, who died suddenly on a day when his life insurance policies overlapped. It didn't take long for Belle to remarry, but her second husband, Peter Gunness, also met a mysterious and allegedly crushed by a meat grinder. Neighbors were suspicious, but Belle was never charged. However, her killing spree didn't stop there. Belle then turned to placing Lonely Hearts ads in newspapers, seeking wealthy suitors to join her on the farm. One by one, these men would arrive in La Porte, supposedly to marry her, and none of them were ever seen again. The truth only began to unravel when one of the missing men's brothers, suspicious of his siblings' disappearance, pressed authorities to investigate Belle. In 1908, just as the investigation was heating up, Belle's farmhouse burned to the ground. Inside, authorities found the bodies of her 3 children and a headless woman, presumed to be Belle herself. But was it? Many believe the headless body was a decoy, and Belle had faked her death to escape justice. As investigators dug through the rubble, they found dozens of bodies buried around the property. Some estimates suggest Belle may have killed as many as 40 people. Despite this horrifying discovery, Belle Gunness was never definitively caught or confirmed dead. Some reported sightings of her continued for years after the fire, but no conclusive evidence ever surfaced. Did she die in the fire, or did she escape to continue her killing spree elsewhere? The mystery of Belle Gunness remains unsolved, but her gruesome legacy lives on as one of the most notorious cases in American crime history. Her farm, once a place of promised romance and new beginnings, turned out to be a deadly trap for dozens of unsuspecting victims. So next time you hear a story of a black widow, remember Belle Gunness, the woman who may have been one of the deadliest female serial killers ever, and she might have gotten away with it. She vanished off of the face of the earth, and nobody knows why. Maura was a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She was described as a bright and athletic young woman, but in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, things started to go downhill for her. She had a few personal issues. She was caught using a stolen credit card to buy food, had crashed her father's car, and seemed generally stressed. On February 9, 2004, Maura sent an email to her professors saying she would be out of town for a family emergency, though no such emergency existed. That same day, Maura packed some belongings, withdrew nearly all the money from her bank account, and drove her car toward New Hampshire. Her destination remains unknown to this day, but it was clear she had planned to leave for at least a few days. At around 7:30 p.m., Maura's car skidded off a winding road in the small town of Woodsville, New Hampshire, and crashed into a snowbank. A nearby resident saw the accident and offered to call for help, but Maura declined, saying she had already called AAA, though records later showed she hadn't. By the time police arrived on the scene, just 10 minutes later, Maura had vanished. Her car was left abandoned, locked, with some of her personal belongings inside, but there was no sign of her anywhere. No footprints in the snow leading away, no clues to where she might have gone. It was as if she had disappeared into thin air. What's strange is that despite multiple searches of the area, including using tracking dogs and helicopters, no significant clues were found to indicate where Maura went. The dogs briefly followed her scent for about 100 yards down the road before it abruptly stopped. Many theorized that she may have gotten into a car with someone, willingly or otherwise. Theories about Maura's disappearance have been wide-ranging and speculative. Some believe she wanted to start a new life and ran away intentionally, while others think she may have met with foul play. There's also the possibility that she got lost in the cold, snowy wilderness and succumb to the harsh weather conditions. However, despite years of searching, no body or clear evidence has ever been found to support any of these theories. What makes this case even more mysterious is Maura's actions in the days and hours leading up to her disappearance. Why did she abruptly leave school, telling no one where she was going? Why did she decline help after the accident? And why has there been no trace of her since? In the years that followed, Maura's case became one of the most widely discussed disappearances online. Countless forums, podcasts, and documentaries have been dedicated to piecing together the puzzle of what happened to her. Investigators have looked into every possible lead, but each one seems to raise more questions than answers. One compelling theory involves a nearby house that was searched by police years after Maura disappeared. Cadaver dogs alerted to something in the basement, but no physical evidence was found. Despite this, some believe that Maura may have been taken to that house, though it remains speculative. Another theory is that Maura was picked up by a passerby after her car crashed, either hitching a ride or being forced into someone's vehicle. Given the rural location and cold weather, it would have been difficult for Maura to travel far on foot, especially in the dark. But no witnesses have ever come forward to corroborate this, and there were no reports of any suspicious vehicles in the area that night. To this day, Maura Murray's disappearance remains unsolved, and her family continues to search for answers. In 2021, on the 17th anniversary of her disappearance, law enforcement dug in a nearby area after receiving a tip, but nothing was found. The case has even been referred to as the first mystery of the social media age, with thousands of online sleuths and true crime fans dedicating their time to finding the truth. What really happened to Maura Murray? Was she running from something or someone? Did she plan to disappear, or did she fall victim to an unfortunate circumstance? Until new evidence emerges, we may never know for sure. But her case remains one of the most perplexing unsolved disappearances, continuing to capture the attention of true crime enthusiasts around the world. If you want to learn more about Maura Murray's case or follow the latest developments, be sure to check out online resources like the official Missing Persons website and podcasts dedicated to her story. But for now, her disappearance remains a haunting mystery that still has everyone asking the same question: where's Maura Murray? This case has always struck a deeply personal chord with me. It's not just because of the mystery, but because of how human and relatable her story feels. She wasn't some distant figure. She was a young woman, only 21 years old, trying to navigate the messiness of life. Like so many of us at that age, she was dealing with a mix of stress, mistakes, and uncertainty about the future. It is the fact that her disappearance is filled with everyday moments: an email to her professors, withdrawing cash from her bank, driving off on a cold winter day. Those are things any one of us could do. But then, somewhere along the way, everything changed. And that thought that in an instant, a person could simply vanish from the world, it's unsettling and heartbreaking. I think a lot about her family, especially her father. The pain of not knowing, the endless search for answers, it must be unbearable. It's one thing to lose a loved one, but to lose someone and never have closure is a wound that never heals. Her family has fought tirelessly to keep her case alive, year after year, without any concrete resolution. They deserve answers, and more than anything, they deserve peace. It's easy to get caught up in the mystery and the what-ifs, the theories that swirl around about whether she ran away, met with foul play, or simply got lost in the wilderness. But underneath it all, it's essential to remember that Maura was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. And somewhere out there, she's still missing. For me, Maura's case is a reminder of how fragile life can be, and how easily a person's story can be reduced to a headline or a cold case file. But behind that, there's a real life, a life filled with hopes, dreams, struggles, and fears. And that's what makes her disappearance so deeply human and so profoundly sad. I hope that one day, her family will get the answers they've been searching for, and that Maura's story can finally have the closure it deserves. Until then, we can only hope to keep her memory alive and never stop looking for the truth.